I really love ships, but today I'm going to challenge myself by trying to build a plane in the Roblox game Welcome to Bloxburg, and you guys are coming with me.
Now, I've never built a plane before, as my speciality within Bloxburg is mostly ocean liners, so this will definitely be an interesting build for me. It's also the first time where I don't really know where to start, so because of this, I've gained the help of two incredible Bloxburg plane builders, Lux and Bring. They're also here representing the BAC, which is a massive plane building community here in Bloxburg. The first thing on our agenda is figuring out how big we actually want this plane. To do that, we'll measure the number of chairs the DC-8 has in a single row, which is 6, and then we'll make a big circle around it as the guide for the body of the aircraft. Once the measurement for the width of the fuselage is done, it's time to do the same with the length. Now, I'm told the DC-8 is the longest narrow-bodied plane ever built, so I want it to take up most of the diagonal plot. Now, some shipbuilders in Bloxburg use decals to help plan their vessels, similar to what's happening here. Personally, I prefer to use my own method of translating drawings to Bloxburg, which you would know if you've seen my other videos. But I decided to let Walt do his thing, as this is the standard in plane building, and he's the professional here. And just to ensure that everything we've done so far is perfectly in scale, we lined up the windows to the decals. And with that, pretty much all the rough planning for the airliner was already done, and it was time to move on to the next step of the process. And now that I have a basic understanding of how to actually put a Bloxburg plane together, I'm able to construct the entire middle section of the plane. Now, I'm going to split this build into 3 distinct parts, that being the nose, the midsection, and the rear. The nose is definitely going to be the hardest, because if I want this plane to look accurate to the real Douglas DC-8, I need to get the shapes perfectly right, and it's more of the same for the rear. This is actually the first time I've ever built something seriously that's based off a real world vehicle. All of my builds are my own interpretation or my own design, but being that this is a real plane that's really flown, I don't exactly have the freedom I'm used to, so hopefully I get used to it and don't stray away too much from the real thing. Even though I just said the front section of the plane will probably be the hardest part, we decided to throw ourselves in the deep end and lock in. And we got some decent initial progress, although Lux and I completely destroyed the front sections we're building on here a bit later on. Then it was time to do the layout. I was alone for this part as our professionals were asleep or at school or something. Can you imagine doing anything other than playing Bloxburg? That's crazy.
It's almost like I have more hours on Bloxburg than I do in my actual real-life captain's license I've been doing for the past 4 years. Can you imagine that?
But that is beside the point, and the layout of my DC-8 was going really well. Starting on some interior stuff was definitely what the doctor ordered after all that basic shape mumbo jumbo I was doing with Walt earlier. I decided that instead of a boring plane with a normal first class and economy section, I'd try something a bit more familiar. I came up with the idea of a lounge arrangement for first class instead of just bigger seats like you'd find today. This is a bit more accurate to the 1950s and 60s when airliners had sky lounges, although none were quite like what I had planned. And it was definitely somewhat based off ocean liners. But all that being said, I did decide to make the economy section out the back a little bit more normal. Another job I needed to do for the interior was paneling the walls. This way the interior could have a really nice texture and not be painfully white like the exterior. Now, I really love building unique shapes in Bloxburg, just like with the custom hulls in my ocean liners, but there's something so much more fun about making custom furniture. So I decided to go all out with the seats in this plane, and I decided the regular economy ones would be dark red, just like the BSO logo and the steward uniforms. But the first class seats would be a really elegant off-white, and I really love this new fabric texture they added somewhat recently. Despite the now very much lacking exterior progress, I decided to continue with the interior as I was feeling pretty inspired by the mid-century style. I actually built this plane before the 1955 Perigee refit, so it was my first time playing around with the mid-century style for a video, so bear with me as I figure it out and learn the style as the build goes on. It was also the first time I thought about having clear cubes on the floor to add more texture, which is a technique in almost every room aboard the new Perigee. After that, I took a quick break to chat with some good friends. Breaking up a big build like this by hanging out with friends in Roblox and in person is definitely a good idea. Now that I've put some lights in, you can get a better idea of what I'm actually building here, and don't worry, I changed the colour scheme pretty soon from this boring palette. I also decided I wanted the first class lounge to have a semicircle bar as well as some curtain details. And here's when I decided to completely overhaul the colours, and I think the improvement speaks for itself. And that double texture floor is just the cherry on top. Now that we're 10 hours into this build, I think it's time to make the exterior look a little bit more put together. So Lux and I teamed up to properly tackle this front section. Now, poor Lux tried their best to explain it to me, but my brain was apparently a rock that day. But we eventually prevailed, and we had successfully constructed the nose of this airliner using a special technique involving spinning structurals. Now, I really thought the nose of this plane would be pretty similar to making the nose of my airship, but I was massively mistaken. Instead of lining up structurals by hand like I did for the airship, the nose of this plane came together by creating circles and semicircles of structurals that can pivot and move around a single fixed point. This allows us to slowly recreate the shapes of the DC-8's nose. This allows us to isolate different sections of the nose that need to be on different angles, which is why there are so many different coloured shapes being used and why it looks like the back of my computer. We also have to make sure we leave the right amount of space for the windshield, as without this it'll just look like a big grey floating hot dog instead of a plane. And trust me, I've already built enough big grey floating hot dogs. I'm probably not explaining it very well here, which is why I'm not the professional, so if you want to support these talented people, be sure to join the Bloxburg Aviation Community's Discord server. With the nose of the plane shaped out, I could finally start on the part of the plane I'd been most looking forward to, the cockpit. I actually went on a plane in October, which was right before I started to film this video, so I took the opportunity to put my nerd hat on and ask for a flight deck tour. The captain was pretty busy though, so I made sure to only bother him for a minute or so.
This is really cool. So what are all the buttons at the top side do?
Oh, these ones? Oh, one for everything.
Yeah.
Every different system.
Fair enough. What are you doing there?
So the iris is on.
Yeah.
The actual reference system, so 3D position space.
Fair enough. A lot more tighter in here than I thought it would be, if I'm being honest.
What room?
Yeah. Seats look comfortable though.
No, the seats up to There's just no room for it.
Yeah, this looks really cool. I do 3D models online, so I'm gonna take this footage, use it to kind of model all this.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. What's your name, sorry?
Michael.
Logan. Good to meet you.
Alright, we gotta keep moving.
Oh yeah, no worries. I don't want to get in your way too much. I appreciate you though.
No worries.
Thanks for that, Michael. Now, even though the Boeing 737 is a very different plane to the DCA, I still thought it was really cool to see a real cockpit for the first time. I always love getting professionals on these videos, especially when they can explain what's going on so you guys don't get left behind. And to be completely honest with you, I have no idea what I'm building here, and I really don't like not knowing what I'm building. I feel like I can make things a lot more accurate if I actually know what everything here does, but I figure because these are mostly just buttons and gauges, I should be able to make it somewhat accurate without too much knowledge, and I did mostly end up just copying photos of real DC-8 cockpits. Now, the front part of the cockpit here actually took me over 7 hours to build over 2 days, but I had quite a lot of fun doing it. Boy, does time fly when you're placing thousands of buttons on a control panel in the Roblox game Welcome to Bloxburg. Honestly, the hardest part about the cockpit was paneling around it, so the inside could be the grey colour here while the outside's still the white. Because it's such a small room, I could barely see what I was doing and it was extremely miserable. And when I'm loading in the plane, I can actually see all this paneling, so you can see how crazy it is. So after around 3 hours of paneling, the cockpit was finally grey on the inside and it was time to work on more interior details. The first thing I wanted to add were the lavatories, and I wanted these behind some really cool custom doors, but it turns out having a pre-built toilet would make the lavatory look really dumb, so I decided to just make fake doors that can't be opened. Then I added some more small details around, like more doors and some cabinets in the flight deck. Now, after some further research into the DC-8's cockpit, I realized there was an engineer's area to the side, so for the sake of accuracy, I decided to completely rework the cockpit to fit it in. On the Commodore Turner channel, no details left unturned, so if I make any mistakes in the build here in terms of accuracy, please let me know in the comments. And this was another pretty big job, and it took me another few hours to finish it. I don't think I've ever spent so much time building a room so tiny, but it was 100% worth it because the cockpit turned out amazing by the end. Then it was time to tackle the main doors. I wanted these to be able to actually open and close utilizing the scooter trick. If you don't know this classic Bloxburg building technique, it's pretty much when you attach a cube to a scooter just like this, and by moving the scooter, the cube disappears. I have no idea who first discovered this, so I can't give anyone credit, but you should just subscribe to me if you haven't seen this trick before, or if you're just enjoying the video. After the door was finally finished and working, I decided to add my signature to this build, which is a Zeppelin in the dining room. All my builds have this, and it's just sort of a way you can tell that I made something. 20 hours in, and it's time to keep adding to the exterior. The first thing on today's agenda is the air intakes on the nose, and then I can start on my livery. I want this livery to be reminiscent of TWA's 1960s liveries, just with BSL colours, and I was really excited to do this livery as it would finally make the exterior look like my own thing instead of just a boring recreation of a plane. I really wish we had metallic textures here in Bloxburg so the grey underbelly could look more period accurate, but I hope the vibrant red of the rest of the plane makes up for it. I also had to figure out what I wanted this airline to be actually called, so after brainstorming a couple of names, I landed on BSL International Airways. And finally, the plane's exterior started to look really awesome. So I decided to check in with our professionals and have a chat about the next step of the process, which is the tail. We all decided to put our best foot forward and got to work on it, and it slowly started to take shape. And then it was time for the tail fin, which I was super excited to decorate with the BSL colours of green, blue, red, and yellow. And we were getting some crazy progress, and we weren't stopping anytime soon. By now the pros and I had been working on call for a few hours, but that didn't stop us from starting on the wings. Building the wings was somewhat similar to doing a custom hull in a Bloxburg ocean liner, so it actually wasn't super hard for me to understand, it was just time consuming. But it was worth every second we spent building them because the wings were starting to look amazing. And before we knew it, 30 hours had came and went, and my custom Douglas DCA Airliner was finally complete.